Chapter 11, Blood and Immunity. Blood is the fluid that circulates vessels, bringing oxygen and nourishment to cells, carrying away the bad stuff. Blood also distributes body heat, carries special substances, antibodies, hormones, and certain components of our blood can protect against disease. So let's jump into chapter 11, blood. So the average, hold tight. Okay, that was a little weird. The average adult has about 5 liters of blood. If someone is tall, heavy, even short in stature, small, petite, they'll have less. The tall person may have more. Newborns, I think, have like 1 quart. I think I might get that wrong. Anyway, but blood is how much you have is related to the size of the human. Blood plasma is 90% water. That is just wild to think about. And I want you to remember that. You'll definitely see that again. But our blood plasma is 90% water. So this leads me to a side note. I will argue with anybody to stand my ground with my belief that the moon impacts human beings. If the king tide can occur because of a full moon and all the water in the ocean, etc., just imagine how the impact it can have on us if our blood plasma is 90% water. Anyway, okay, side note. Let me go back to medical terminology. Okay, so the remaining contents of plasma is electrolytes, albumin, etc., is protein. Blood cells also make up our blood. Inside of there are erythrocytes, leukocytes, platelets, and thrombocytes. Each one of these has their own special function. This is a great visual showing the whole blood, how it breaks down into plasma, different elements, and then what's in the plasma. Again, 90% water is plasma. That in plasma, that's just wild to me. And then leukocytes, erythrocytes make up the majority of the blood cells, if you will. Okay, so let's read on. Let's keep going for our reference. Here's a great box including what the function of everything does. So erythrocytes, the red blood cells, carry oxygen. They connect to hemoglobin that takes all the oxygen that it needs to regulate the body. Also carries some carbon dioxide and buffers blood. So that's what the red blood cells do. The white blood cells, or the leukocytes, those are responsible for protecting against foreign substances. This is our immunity. And then platelets, they maintain our homeostasis. They keep our normal regulation of our blood. And so let's keep reading through the chapter to learn even more about these. The next box is acronyms. So these are I've talked about acronyms and how I'm not going to hold you, but I do want you to know I'm not going to hold you to the exact knowledge because some abbreviations and acronyms are approved, some are not approved. These are very common, so you can be familiar with these. A CBC, if you're at a doctor's office, hospital, any healthcare site, and they order a CBC, that's a complete blood count. RBC is red blood cell, WBC, white blood cell. Central nervous system, we reviewed that when we did neuro. ECG, this is an electrocardiogram, very similar to an EKG, so just be real careful with this acronym. And remember, an EEG is an encephaloelectrogram. So just be careful with some of them until you get into your workplace and maybe you specialize in neuro, then you'll frequently use EEG. If you specialize in cardio, you'll use EKG or ECG. STIs, I mean, that's just straight, it is what it is. Acronyms, vowel, lend itself to pronunciation, etc. You can read that. Um, I'm not going to heavily test on acronyms and abbreviations because like I said, some are approved, some are not. It depends on where you work. All right, erythrocytes, we've already said this once before, they carry oxygen to the cells. Read that paragraph. Leukocytes are the white blood cells. So many things that are happening at the cellular level to protect against foreign substances, diseases, cancers, neoplasms, whatever you want to call, whatever word you want to use to describe cancer. So many things. And when we're talking about foreign substances, we're even talking about food. A lot of the food that humans consume right now is foreign. It's not real food. So think about how busy those little white blood cells are. The neutrophils, the eosinophils, basophils, lymphocytes, which are T and B cells. let's keep going. We'll learn more about that here. So it's just important. Our bodies amazingly designed to keep us healthy and keep us in normal regulation, depending on what we're exposed to externally in the sun, the weather, elements, what we're putting in our bodies internally, and even the to counteract the impact of electrical activity, like us carrying cell phones that are 5G or being near radiation that we're not aware of in small amounts, etc. Our bodies are just they're great at regulating this stuff. Okay, platelets. They are important. Yes, homeostasis. I talked about that just a few minutes ago. You're welcome to read these. You do not have to memorize these. This is not a chemistry class. This is not an anatomy class. I am not going to hold you to these visuals, but great to have as a reference. This is what it looks like when a injury and platelet plugs, where it's going to start to clot. Da, 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 da. Fibrin of the cells. Yes. Okay, so blood types. Let me say one more thing about platelets and clotting. DIC is a acronym that's mentioned somewhere in this chapter. I came across it, and in the hospital healthcare setting, the formal name is disseminated coagulation, DIC, and to enter. Okay, let me just stop and find it. Now I got to find it because I want to tell you about it because it's important, because it's deadly. It is where your body starts to clot, and am I going to be able to find it quick enough? I may not. Okay, so let me just abandon that thought. Read about it. How about that? It's important enough to read about in your chapter when you do come across it. The acronym in healthcare is the DIC. The real meaning is disseminated intercoagulation, something, something, but we call it death is coming because it's such a severe traumatic event that occurs in the body. It can be related to illicit drugs, it can be related to heat, it can be related to shock, it can be related to an adverse reaction to a medicine. There's so many things that can cause that clotting, and nerve agents. I'm dating myself here, but there was a movie called Contagion back in the 90s, I think. And there was a lot of DIC in that from a contagious um, strain of something that was being spread about humans. Anyway, the reason I'm mentioning it because DIC is like the worst of the worst blood discrepancy, and humans can survive it, animals cannot. It's challenging for animals to survive it at this point. They can, but there's a lot of expense and a lot of medical necessities to get them back to normal. But humans, we can treat, but not all of them survive. So look at DIC. That's the reason I mentioned it. It is like the worst thing that could happen, um, emergency wise. Okay, blood types. Genetically inherited proteins in our blood dictate what our blood type is, and if we're going to have any of the Rh negative or Rh positive underliers. So read all about that. Blood type is important because you never want to give someone the wrong blood type. You can have all sorts of autoimmune or allergic reactions if you give someone the wrong blood type if you need blood. By the way, if you're type O and O positive, you are the universal donor. Nope, O negative is the universal donor. But type O is the most sought out blood for blood donations. By the way, if you donate blood, you're only donating like a half of a liter. So if your body's composed of 5 liters of blood, when you donate half a liter, you just need to take it easy that day. It's not a big deal. You're not going to be down for days, but it can make you lightheaded. So you got to eat and drink a lot of water when you donate blood. If you're not donating blood, please consider it on a regular basis. It really does help our trauma rooms and emergency services. Okay. Immunity. Immunity is protection against disease. Some of it we are born with. For example, skin, mucus. We talked about this in the eyes, the ears, the nose section. A lot of that, what we have is already built in innate immunity. Lymph tissue, that our lymphatic system that keeps us healthy, and even the like phagocytosis at the cellular level in our white blood cells, that's innate immunity. Adaptive immunity. This has been quite a topic, a controversial topic in the past 5 years due to a global pandemic and an immunization that was created rather no, let's say marketed rather quickly, and then it was mandated. A vaccine was mandated for employment of our healthcare folks and everyone in the military. I believe that's for the first time ever in our history of mankind. So lots of back and forth. I could do an entire presentation on the good, the bad, and the ugly related to what we've experienced the past 5 years in healthcare related to um, immunity and forced vaccines, etc. The adaptive immunity. So T cells is part of our body. They mature in the thymus. T cells are cell-mediated immunity. B cells also. Let me just side note. There's a lot of we'll get to that. Um, Great things coming out of modern medicine that I was going to state when it comes to immunity. Um, and I'll just leave it at that. How about that? Types of adaptive immunity. There's some that's natural, just coming in contact with organisms like the common cold, which COVID is a coronavirus, and a coronavirus is the common cold. Some cold seasons, flu seasons, are worse than others, just as normal rotation, if you will. And then there's lab created things our bodies when they're exposed, we can still have our own natural adaptive immunity to certain organisms, and then we have the vaccine, passive, active. The polio vaccine back in the 50s and 60s was active. I think now it is passive. They've made it passive over the past 50 years. Um, some flu shots still are active, not all of them, but many of them have now moved into the passive serum. So read about that in your book. You're welcome to ask me any questions. But you can certainly, oh, here's terminology. I don't want to skip over this. This is important. A granulocyte, albumin, antibody, antigen, B cell, band cell, basophil, blood, coagulation. Just, say these words out loud. Just practice them. Fibrinogen, and then, of course, you want to know what you're kind of talking about here. Let's look for some root words. Here we go. Here's your suffixes, the meanings related to blood, another exercise. Again, the answers are in the back of your book. Root words for blood and immunity. Some of these you recognize, like myelo, that's bone. We know that. Hemo is blood. Erythro, that's your red blood cells. Leuko, your white blood cells. Lympho, we talked about some of that, and the lymphatic system also. Thrombos, a blood clot. Here's for blood chemistry. And some of these, um, just, yeah, know where they are to look them up if you were to so need them. I don't think I've ever said azoturia in my entire nursing career of 27 years, but it's there. I have iron is very common, ferrous, if you remember that from chemistry on the, oh, what's that chart? Yeah. If you recognize some of these, that's great. If not, just don't worry about it. Again, you don't have to be perfect leaving my terminology class, just competent and know where to look things up. Anemia is abnormal amounts of low hemoglobin in the blood. Lots of reasons for anemia. Some of it's genetic, some of it is low, poor food intake. Careers in hematology, absolutely. Hematology is a great profession if you love the science and the chemistry of all this. Aplastic anemia, nutritional anemia, pernicious anemia, that's a B12 deficiency. You can read all about that because I'm running out of time. Da-da-da-da. Reticuli, yep, you can read about that. Coagulation disorders. Here's my DIC. Disseminated intravascular coagulation. I really wanted you guys to read that and understand that. And this book, it's fine here. It only gives you 2 or 3 sentences, but this is a big deal in healthcare if somebody reaches that point of DIC as far as blood. I said it was the worst thing that could happen. I meant like traumatically, suddenly, emergently. Neoplasms, leukemia, they're pretty awful too. Um, it- but at least you kind of know about them. There are treatments for those. The DIC is very urgent. That's what I meant by worst case scenario. Clinical aspects, you're going to have to read this on your own because I got 15 seconds. Hypersensitivity is overreaction, immunodeficiency. Autoimmune diseases. Scroll, scroll, scroll. I don't know what's at the bottom of that page. Oh, that's it. Okay, I made it. Let me know if you have any